Dusty, snap out of it!
Any of this look familiar?
Our constellation contact is on approach.
Yeah, but come on. Exploring space? Who does that anymore? Ain't the space we've already got complicated enough?
Welcome aboard the Starfield Report podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Starfield Report podcast. This is Kenny Smyson, and with me, as always, is Jax. How you doing, Jax?
Doing great this morning. Welcome, captains. How are y'all doing today?
And we have a special treat for you guys today. The Starfield Report's first ever interview with Wykkyd Gaming, the author of the Darkstar. What's the bundle actually called? The new one. I'm brain farting.
Total Gameplay Overhaul. Darkstar Total Gameplay Overhaul.
Okay, excellent. So glad to have you here with us, Wykkyd, and it's going to be a fun day. Now we're going to go ahead and hop right into kind of just quick little introduction. So, what's your experience with Bethesda gaming? What was your first Bethesda game? Like for me, for example, it was Oblivion. For Jax, it was Morrowind, and so we've been playing for about 20 years. What was your entry point into Bethesda games?
Skyrim. It was a copy of the game that I bought for my oldest son on the day of the release that he proceeded to play for a single day and then spend the next 2 months watching YouTube videos about it rather than playing it.
Right?
So I ended up taking it and playing it for a bit and then buying my own copy. And it was a space filler for me between MMO sessions.
It's funny you say that because my wife's younger brother, was the same way. I had been playing the game Skyrim for 3 or 4 months, and I had told him about it. And he's like, "Yeah, I'll check it out." And like a week later, he's like, "Yeah, I played that game. I completed it in a weekend." And I was like, "Are you sure about that?"
Well, if he had focused on the main quest and nothing else, and you had,
And that's what he just mainlined it right through to the end, and that was it. And that was his experience, which is kind of sad because there's so much more to it. All of the Bethesda games, there's so much more to them than just the main quest.
Yep. So you said MMO time, so I'm assuming. Okay, in our pre-show, you talked about EverQuest, and then you went on to World of Warcraft.
So yeah, I was a competitive, like, top 10 in the world MMO raider in EverQuest, and then moved
Nice.
from that, created my own guild for EverQuest 2. I beta tested EverQuest 2, moved my guild over there, and we were tied for number 1 for a while, and then we all gave up on the game because we didn't feel like it was rewarding enough to play. And then a lot of us moved over to World of Warcraft. I ended up going on and off with that game over the years, and I'd have little spurts where I played really hardcore and spurts where I was like, I want to focus on real life. And then reconnected with a former girlfriend who ended up becoming my wife, and she was in a different state, and we socialized over World of Warcraft because she was a player. So then we became a WoW family for a while. I continued beta testing other MMOs, ended up moving off to Rift, and then from Rift, I went to Elder Scrolls Online. So those are my main lines: CQ, EQ2, WoW, Rift, and ESO. And the important thing as a Starfield mod author for this conversation is I actually started with, what we call modding for single player games, add-on development with the original EverQuest, basically my own UI hacks and tweaks and updates for that game, and then EverQuest 2, and then World of Warcraft. those were all stuff I shared just with my friends and my guild mates, because
Right.
we considered it kind of a competitive edge kind of situation. And then with Rift, I started publishing add-ons for that. I did this one called Gadgets Outfitter, which let you, in that game, you could have multiple builds for your different characters. Like I was a warrior, so you could legitimately be a tank or a DPS or an off tank or you know, 6, 7 different PvP builds, and then, you know, grinding builds for going through dungeons and doing questing. And so I built a mod that would, or an add-on that would shift your gear around, swap your equipment, swap your character loadout, your build, your skills, perk points. You know, I forget what they called them in that game.
Mhm.
All with the press of a button. So you'd spend an hour or so setting it up, and then within a half a second, you were a tank. Now I'm a
Mhm.
DPS. Now I'm this. Now I'm that. And you
Right.
could do it while running between combats, and be like, all right, this combat I'm a DPS, and as I'm running, I push the button and I'd convert into a tank before I hit the next mob.
Nice.
It was awesome. And then that got me recruited by the development team into the closed beta for Elder Scrolls Online as an add-on developer. So I got to play the release candidate of that, which came out in, I think that hit our beta servers on December 23rd, just before release. So I forget, I think it was 2014 or 2015. I think maybe 2015.
Okay.
But the year it came out, if you backtracked, that December 23rd was when the release candidate was given to me and the other 99 people on that private server. Um, so then I beat the game content, and then week 1 of January, they released the dev tools for us to start doing add-on dev there. I recreated that Gadgets Outfitter for Elder Scrolls Online, um, and built it my own coding framework that a lot of other add-on developers ended up using as a kind of a backplane for their mods. Um, and then because of the hype around that game and the fact that I was a featured add-on developer by ZeniMax Media, like they did a feature article and an interview and all of that. And when that game dropped, I went from like 0 to almost 2 million downloads of my add-ons like that first week.
Wow.
It was absolutely nuts. And like I've got players on my Discord that use my Darkstar stuff now that know me from those days. And then like I vanished from the scene for a while because when we moved, we didn't have broadband internet, so I had to give it all up. And I transitioned all of my mod maintenance over to a team of people, and they're still carrying it today. As far as I'm aware, all of that stuff still works.
Hmm.
But they took over maintenance, and I stopped playing MMOs altogether. And here I am popping back up on the scene, and I'm getting private messages from people. Hey, loved your stuff in Elder Scrolls Online.
You're like,
Wow.
yeah, you've been with me for a long time, buddy.
Yeah, that's impressive. 10 years and doing all that mod work. You're talking about the whole uh, uh, change up of your class and everything. I remember playing Guild Wars 2 pretty heavily for about 2 to 3 years. My friends and I were all into it, and it was annoying to always have to go and change my build, like manually changing everything. I remember that being very frustrating. I don't know if they ever have like a loadout or anything like that they've added, or a mod or something, but
Well, that was one of the big updates for Fallout 76 when they did. I can't remember which update it was, but they added a loadout, um, like it's like a little tree. You walk up to it and you have to pay, of course, right?
Yep.
Everything's pay a few bucks now. So you pay a few bucks and you can get additional different loadouts. I think you can get up to 8 or 10. It's been a couple of years since I've done 76, but that was a big update they did in that game where you could be the DPS, or you could change over and you could have your crafting loadout, or your what do they call them?
And I was doing it with add-ons back in 2012.
Right. Yeah. Somebody took notice and said, "Hey, that'd be a good feature in our game."
So my first question about the Darkstar Total Game Overhaul is I've intentionally, for the sake of this podcast, not downloaded it yet. My experience so far is just Darkstar Astra Dynamics, and what I'm doing is I'm gonna go through the New Game Plus and like treat a new universe to begin the mastery of the Total Game Overhaul. But for players who are new into modding and certainly haven't downloaded the Total Game Overhaul yet, what's the selling point? What's your elevator pitch as to why that they should have downloaded it to improve their game?
Bear with me because I'm not a sales pitch kind of person by nature. But Darkstar, the new one, I'm calling it the Total Gameplay Overhaul. If you're playing on PC, you would just see it's darkstar.esm. At its core, it is designed to just permanently live in your load order from level 1 all the way to level 999 plus, to just become a part of your entire Starfield playing experience. That's the goal, is to underlie everything, to reward everything you do, and take gameplay as long as you keep playing the one character, versus where Starfield cuts off, which is right around level 75 to 90, depending on how you consider scaling, right? So there'll be no more of this, I've out-leveled everything in the game, what's the point anymore? Oh, I've gone, through the Unity 10 times, now there's nothing for me to do, right? That's the thing of the past. The I've hit advanced weapons, so now there's nothing more for me. All of that's a thing of the past too. They keep going, right? You won't max out your weapons and your equipment and your ship parts until around level 225 and NG plus 50.
Okay.
That's how
Got a long
far
way to go.
the scaling and the increases keep going, and the enemies get those scaling increases too.
Okay. Yeah.
More than just level updates for the enemies, which sure, yes, they level with you to a percentage. It does it in a way where the left side of your galaxy map is still weaker than your right side.
Okay.
Right? So I did the level scaling based on their original level as compared to a potential level 60 player. So if their spawnable level was higher than 60, their percentage for their scaling versus your level is higher than 1. If their level was originally lower than 60, then their potential scaling is lower than 1. So lower than 100% of your level.
Mhm.
So you'll see a range of, hey, there's these critters, literally defined in the game files as critters, that are about 15% of my level. Oh, there's a Starborn boss who is 190% my level. So there's
Right.
a pretty big range, and it depends
Okay.
on which planet you're standing on, what point of interest you're in, and all of that. And it's all underneath the hood. But in addition to that, depending on the way you set up your challenge rating in Darkstar, I mess with their combat AI. And the main thing I turned up was group tactics. So if you are working your way through a point of interest slowly and methodically, but you've alerted your enemies to your presence, going slow is the worst thing on the planet, because they will find a way to circle around behind you and come at you without alerting you to their presence.
Yep.
And next thing you know, that cover you're ducked behind thinking you're safe, you're getting shot in the back of the head, and everything else by a squad of 3 that came around at you from behind.
Yep. That's
And that's
exactly
all
what I
brand new
found.
with Darkstar.
Yeah.
We've got video after video after video online of people doing that, and live streams of streamers on Twitch that get just nailed by this hardcore.
They don't do that. Yes, they do now.
They do now.
Yeah.
So
We-
it increases your tactical play and your rewards for playing. The challenge never goes away. Sure, you can eventually, once you max out your Darkstar equipment, you can overpower the enemies, but it takes a lot of effort. A lot of effort.
Did you do anything with the companion AI or anything? They're still going to be focused on what they've always focused on in front of you and moving forward. Gotcha.
Yep. And if you really want companion upgrades, most of the people on my Discord would recommend Darkstar Emissaries
Hmm.
as your companion upgrade.
Okay.
So
I
that's free mod, and it turns them into Starborn. And it's you pick basically a data slate and say, I want this NPC to be Starborn, and they
right.
get powers and they become essential, unkillable, ignore friendly fire, and some of them get quite nasty. Quite as Sarah is everybody's community favorite once you make her Starborn.
That's
The
funny
same
how
Sarah they complain about.
exactly.
Does that mod give them like a certain, like based on the NPC, a certain power? Like Barrett has his duplicate power. Okay,
So yes, most of them they're when you get into like the extended elite characters that don't have side quests and stuff, they're kind of some of them are similar to each other. Um, but like you'll definitely see difference between Betty Hauser and Rosie Tanhill, Sarah, Andresia, Barrett, Sam. They all
okay.
have their own little unique power set. And eventually that feature will roll into Darkstar TGO. So if you own Darkstar, you'll eventually get that feature set as well, but it'll be in a more limited, more game balanced fashion.
Oh, so it's
And
already
I'm
cooked into the TGO out the gate.
not yet.
Oh, you're
It's
gonna
coming
patch that
soon.
in later. Okay.
Yep.
And if I remember correctly, that's toggable, right? You
Oh
can
yeah.
have your companion on this planet, they're starborn, and then you go to a different planet and you toggle it off because maybe you want to be wandering through Aquila City and
You can actually do it mid combat.
yeah.
You can watch Sarah pull out her weapon, open the slate, and she's holding an inflictor because she's a starborn, and and I gave her basically an upgraded version of the emissary's weapon if you've done the main quest line.
Mhm.
So you see her pulling out her weapon, you're like, crap, I didn't want her starborn in this POI. You could open the data slate, spawns the terminal, switch her back to mortal, and it gives her default gear back, takes her powers away, and flips the little switch that says she's not starborn anymore. And then you'll see as you close the terminal, her armor changes and her weapon changes, and she stops casting spells. Like it's real time. It's
Yeah,
pretty awesome.
that is pretty awesome. That way you don't get stuck in, oh man, I just downloaded this mod and I feel like it's too powerful for the area I'm in. Well, toggle it off. On and off. That's one thing about your mods is that they're very player friendly and adjustable so that you if you want to be overpowered, sure you can, but it's your game. Like I was saying earlier, you can play that overpowered character or you can dial it back and play somebody where it's a more challenging more challenging game for you. So I really enjoy it. Um a
And
while
that
back I was watching one, so I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's why I got into modding, on downloading mods, I should say, on Skyrim several years ago on the PC because I had gotten to the point where I'd done everything in Skyrim. I was bored with it, and the first one of the first ones I downloaded was Ordinator, which that's the one that overhauls the perk skill tree. And if I were to just tell people like one mod to download for Skyrim, it would be Ordinator because it fundamentally changes how your character progresses and lets your character be fun in later levels. Because like you're talking, Wicked, how players in Starfield will, what, around like level 70, 75, they'll kind of tap out on being able to really progress their character. And the fact that the Darkstar mod TGO allows players to play well into the hundreds of levels is going to be very rewarding for me to get around to finally downloading it and playing it. Because my experience, I'd only done Astrodynamics because my passion in the game is the shipbuilding. So I've done a ton of shipbuild videos on my YouTube channel, and so I dabbled with that. And you'd done a lot of good things, even just with the Astrodynamics mod, like allowing the cloaking device that the Starborn ships have. You can now install that on your ship, but once you've already become Starborn, right? I think you have to go through the Unity the first time to get that unlocked, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's stuff that just is seems so simple, and not to obviously crap on Bethesda, but there are times when I have that thought. I'm like, they should have thought of this, and so your mod is able to do that pretty effectively. Yeah, and I would a lot of times, like I've got 3 primary characters right now in Starfield, because I get more and more into the role play of games as I get older. Like compared to say Oblivion, I had one character that was level. Well, I don't know what level he was, but I spent 236 hours on him. He did all the faction quests, so he was the master assassin and the fighter stronghold and the hero of Kavach and the champion of Cyrodiil. And then my next character on Oblivion was just a wood elf archer that I just spent a few dozen hours just exploring the countryside, not doing any major quests, just having fun. But now, starting with Skyrim and then of course with Starfield and all the Fallout games, I'll roll different characters, create a new character, just so I have a different roleplay experience, but also because it's so fun in that first 10 to 20 levels where things are challenging and you're unlocking things and the discovery of advancing your character. And so now that you're telling me that my space trucker, which is now level 100, finally, I can enjoy upgrading him and continuing his advancement well past level 100. I mean, that's got me really excited to play the Darkstar TGO.
Yeah, it'll continue to be challenging for you for lots and lots of levels.
Can I? I'm just gonna do it. When Starfield launched, I just happened to be looking for a game to play because I was suffering a really bad bout of insomnia. So for years I've basically been a non-gamer because I was focused on my other creative pursuits. And then I would spend like, here's a month where I'm gonna game, and I would find a new game and play it. Like Cyberpunk and games like that. I've played them, but I don't play every day round the clock normally. And then I found Starfield. I was looking on Game Pass for something free I could download and try, and it kept popping up at the top of the list. And I'm like, I don't even know who that is. I don't know what that is. I don't know if I want a space game right now. I own No Man's Sky. I could go back to that if I wanted a space game. And then I noticed it said Bethesda Game Studios. I'm like, whoa, wait. Like I hadn't been watching the news on what was coming up from what studios because I got so tired of game studios announcing games and then it takes 10, 15 years for them to come out. Right.
Yeah.
So I figured I'd try it. Next thing you know, it's like 1 month later, I've 100%ed the game. I've been through the Unity 37 times. I was level 177, 270, somewhere around there. And then by the time uh, I got my Christmas bonus for my day job, so this is a couple months later, I was almost level 300 and just absolutely bonkers over this game that I'd put almost 2,000 hours into in a short couple of months. And then I used that Christmas bonus plus some money I'd been saving up, bought a gaming laptop, and now I'm modding. So when I started that whole trek down the creation kit, Xedit and the other programs, and started learning how to mod Starfield, my motivation was based on that gameplay experience where I got so far and there was no reward for the player at all for going
Mhm.
through the Unity more than 10 times. Felt like a nerf going through the Unity more, 10 times. Then I found out, yeah, they do actually nerf you for going through the Unity 10 times.
Oh,
Yeah.
what do they do? Because that's my current path that I'm on.
Oh, there is a perk that's hidden that is assigned to every player that starts the game. That what that perk does is keep track of your trips through the Unity. And first, second, third, fourth, all the way up to 10th, each one adds a compounding outgoing damage nerf and incoming damage amplification to the player just because you've been through the Unity. And that counts for space battles and ground battles. If you are on NG10 and beyond, NG10 is where it stops scaling. At NG10, you take double damage and you do half damage permanently.
And
then you put it on extreme. Extreme is 4 times damage incoming and 1/4 damage outgoing if you're on quad extreme. So then double that because you're NG10.
So if I stop at NG9, I won't have that.
You'll still be nerfed. You just won't be fully nerfed.
You'll have
Oh,
some.
okay.
Oh, you may be instead of the ×8 incoming damage, maybe you have ×6.
Yeah.
Yeah, because on my space tracker. Oh, go ahead.
They don't tell you. They don't tell the player community. They didn't announce it anywhere. We just happened to find it in the game files.
You sneaky little modders.
What we thought we were seeing. So when I found that out, very hard was the hardest difficulty. They didn't do the survival mode or all the survival mode upgrades yet.
Mhm.
There was no extreme. There wasn't all of the food and saturation and affliction controls that you have in your gameplay setting. Those weren't there yet. And so me and some other modders did the math, and very hard on pre-NG. So very hard difficulty for somebody that's never been through the Unity was equivalent to normal difficulty on NG10.
Yeah.
So very hard on NG10 was more than double as difficult from a game setting and calculation standpoint as very hard on pre-NG. So if you feel like, hey, I've gone through the new game plus 9 times, 10 times, why am I suddenly getting one shot everywhere I go? Oh, it must be this Starborn armor. It's a piece of crap. Let me go upgrade that. It's not the Starborn armor. The armor's fine. Actually, Starborn armor can get you to the physical damage reduction cap on its own. So adding more armor really is just fluff. That isn't helping you at that point. So it's not the armor, it's the NG nerf. And the fact you're still trying to run the same difficulty you were before. And now add Extreme in on top of that, and then add Darkstar on top of that. So yeah, the risk is definitely there depending on how you dial your gameplay settings. But when I was playing my first character through all that stuff, I was like, where are the upgrades? Where's the rewards for going through NG plus this many times? I had to go through 37 times just to get my powers to 10 because temples weren't spawning. That's how early I did it. That bug still existed. I'd go to Vlad and he'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about, and not give me any quests.
Yeah.
Like, okay, guess I only get 10 powers upgraded this time instead of 22.
Right.
Let me go through the Unity and hope for better next time.
Right.
So that you can't, you run out of ship upgrades at like level 80-ish. You run out of weapon upgrades at level 60, 70-ish. And in fact, you couldn't customize the quality on anything, right?
Yeah,
Base game.
RNG,
It's not editable.
Or not.
So, but there's nothing stopping you in a pure vanilla Starfield from being level 10 and going to Boar or Fermi 3 or Huygens or Archimedes and pushing your way through a POI to eventually get an advanced inflictor. And now you've got the best weapon in the game and everything's easy mode.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then once you got one of those, you were set. There's no reason to ever upgrade. And that's I saw all these things as gaps.
Yeah,
and I was like,
challenged you basically killed the challenge of the game for yourself by doing that.
So I was like, how do I close these gaps? If I was going to download a mod for Starfield, what would I be looking for to solve my game for me? And that's the mod. Those are the mods that I built. That was my motivation, and that just happens to appeal to a large number of people, which is awesome.
So that's pretty cool. So I wanted to ask you, so have you been modding previous Bethesda games, such as the Oblivion we'd already discussed that you hadn't played that, but did you do any mods for Skyrim?
Nothing public now.
No?
I knew enough to be dangerous. Basically, I would find mods other people did, and of course, there was a lot of load order boundaries with Skyrim that thankfully we're not as subjected to for Starfield. But what I would do is I would go to Nexus and download, a dozen different mods, and I would combine them into one mod myself and just run
Gotcha.
my own private copy.
Oh, so that way you'd circumvent the whole load order issue and bugs that came with it by combining them into one mod. Okay.
Yep. Which was much easier to do back then. That's very hard to do today.
Yeah, that was one of the things I wanted to bring up with you, because I don't mod. I don't play on computer. It's just, for me, gaming is an escape. It's something quick. I can sit down and I can play, and I don't have to try to do all the stuff when it comes to computer gaming that you don't have to mess with console. You turn it on and you play. Simple. But luckily we have people like you that their passion is to tweak stuff and play in the playground behind the scenes. And I was just curious as to how much different the modding ability is between, say, Skyrim or Fallout 4 and the new engine, the new creation engine for Starfield. And is it really big, or is it very similar, or just kind of, how does that work?
I'm not 100% sure. Because in the previous games that I had very, very limited touch compared to what I'm doing now. In fact, I basically learned the creation kit as I was making the remake of Darkstar Astrodynamics. So I got into the CK beta program, and then it was a learning curve for me. I had to learn the system and learn the application and what it was capable of doing. For me, I think that Starfield is an amazing modders platform. It's almost like modders paradise, especially now with some modders figuring out how to publish their own custom systems, star systems, and their own custom planets, and like it's sky's the limit. If you've got the time and the imagination, there are almost no limits on what you can pull off with a Starfield mod. Whereas with Skyrim, you're kind of competing with hundreds of different mods that are out there now that are popular, that they're like, there's a mod heat map you can find online of all the different locations across Skyrim and which mods step on it. And so that you can hopefully avoid to step on each other, and like, you don't have that problem with Starfield. Just pick a different planet and go there.
Right. That's something they were in some of the like early release videos of Starfield when it was very new, the first, I don't know, 6 months or so. I heard a lot of talk about how Starfield was specifically one of the specific choices that they made was to make the game very moddable. Then when the kit came out, everybody was like, well, it's so difficult to mod. I think modders are going to step away. And you got all the negative chatter. Like you always get, anytime there's news, you get the little hype, and then you get 2 weeks of just everybody just crapping on the news. Oh, this is horrible. Oh, this is terrible. And you get this big wave of this horribleness. And then once that goes away, then you start to get the real feelings of what's going on. And I think that's where we're at, like you're saying, is that it's different, but Starfield was made to be modded. They specifically made design choices to make it easier for the folks that want to mod it creatively. They've on the back end, the tools are better made, better suited to mod this particular video game.
They are. I think a lot of the old school modders coming over from Skyrim and Fallout that complained about Starfield, they're mostly, I think, anchored on the differences between the games. Like there are some fundamental differences between the way the weapon system works and things like that between Fallout 4 and Starfield. And if you're used to doing it this way, and now you see this new system, it frustrates people. And then there's the change in the way they do the ESM versus ESP system. In Skyrim, Fallout 4, a lot of the mods you downloaded and used were ESPs. In Starfield, that's a big no-no. You're not ever supposed to load an ESP to play the game. That's for development. They want you to use the ESM. and the definition of, what is a full master or a light master or medium master between Skyrim and Fallout versus Starfield. It's a completely new system, a different way they handle the form indexes and everything else that frustrates and/or really angers some people in the modding community. So, but I think maybe I'm benefiting from the fact that I didn't spend a ton of time modding Skyrim and Fallout 4.
Right.
Right? My first main exposure to the creation kit was Starfield. So to me, this just feels fine. I don't,
Mhm.
I understand where the complaints might come from, but I don't share those complaints.
So do
No,
those older modders, do those older modders feel like they've kind of had the control taken away from them somewhat in that? Is that what the issue is?
Maybe for some of them, I don't want to speak for them.
True.
Uh,
Fair.
the complaints that I've seen, it ranges from that to just the fact that it's different.
Hmm.
Not that the control was lost, it's just that it's different.
Yeah.
Right? And then there's the vitriol in the community about Creation Club in general,
Yeah.
and the fact that exists. And you mentioned that you play on console.
Yep.
You represent more than 75% of the player base of Starfield.
Yeah. And I've paid for plenty of mods, even to this date. I love your mod. I downloaded your Astrodynamics. I downloaded the I just blanked the other one.
Manufacturing.
Thank you so much for saving me.
Mhm.
Yes, manufacturing and Astrodynamics, and I talk about him every chance I get. Like some of me and Kenny's first conversations were about your mods because I just believe in them so much. They do so much for the game. They give you that extra amount of enjoyment and content and all the stuff that you're like, man, I sure wish I could have. Now I can. So
Yeah.
as soon as the total game overhaul came out, I was like, yeah, I don't care how much it is. That's one. I'm going to do that. I'm going to play that, and I'm going to experience it. And several others. I do find that the pricing there's no set pricing. One guy's skin overhaul for a gun may be $5. The next guy may give you a pack of 20 guns for $1. So it's almost like it's a personal thing with the author.
Yeah.
Am I doing this as a
100%.
hobby or am I trying to make a buck? And so you got to be careful what you're doing, which ones you get if you want, But the cost of times entertainment, it's, I took my wife to the movies, my wife and my 2 grandkids to the movies. It was $100 for 2 hours of entertainment.
Mhm.
Okay. What am I getting for $5? The value is a lot better.
Yep. And
Well-
to confirm your suspicions there, it is 100% down to the author what the mod's going to cost.
That's what I expected.
A lot of the times the $1 ones are, hey, I have this one out here for free and I want to be able to provide an achievement friendly version. So here it is again for $1.
Yeah.
So that people can jump over if they prefer achievement friendly. I tried to price Darkstar based on what was out there of comparable size
Yeah.
and comparable depth, so
Mhm.
that it had a cost value equivalence. So I'm a published author,
Mhm.
and that's a thing that I learned with my novels was if I say found a way to order a bunch of books in mass and then go to at a huge discount and then go to a convention and sell them really low and try and be like really honest and tell people and you're like, oh, I only want to make $2 per printed copy that I sell at this convention, so I'm gonna sell them for like, oh, here's this book that outside of my control online is $36, right? Because that's printing cost and distribution and all this, and I still only earn $2 from that sale online. So I'm gonna keep that $2 here, and that means I can sell you this book for 15. Guess what? When I discount my novels at those conventions, they don't sell.
Glock.
because people see that discount and they're like, "Oh, it must not be worth anything."
Yep.
You cheapen the
Glock had
value
the
of it.
same problem when they came out with the Glock pistols. The manufacturing techniques were so new at the time and so revolutionary. They were able to make handguns on their end, their cost, at half of what other manufacturers were making handguns. So when they went to market for that, people saw those as a cheap gun.
Yep.
And so when they repriced them, they were like, we've got to stay competitive, slightly less than the popular guns out now. But if we give it too much of a discount, like you said, people see it as cheap and don't want to buy it.
Yep.
Not worth
So
it.
that was part of the motivation was basically I looked at what was out there and kind of compared the number of just the amount of stuff that I had to do in the game to make it work. Darkstar is something like 60,000 forms that I edited or created to make that one mod. That is exorbitantly high, comparatively speaking. Most mods, like if you're talking about a gun mod, you might have 100 forms that create that whole weapon. And sure, that person probably spent a good amount of time in 3D toolset programs that I don't understand. I can't do those gun mods. More power to them. But at the end of the day, when you're talking about the size of the mod and the density and the reach and the scope, it's not even on the same playing field.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to be, if I priced Darkstar TGO at like $5, then it puts it at the same tier as those weapon and armor and single item thing. And there are some recommendations that Bethesda Creations team provide to us in the Verified Creator program. And I also use that as a guide. And technically speaking, Darkstar qualifies for the next tier up, pricing wise, which would have made it a $15 mod. I didn't feel comfortable doing that. But to be clear, I also only did Darkstar because of pressure from my player community. Because I kept being asked every day by hundreds of people, when can I get a chain-bit friendly version of Darkstar Astrodynamics and Darkstar Manufacturing?
Yeah.
So,
And neither of those felt good as a $1 mod. And I knew if I was going to make those achievement friendly, they needed to either A, be nerfed, or B, come with some game balancing
right.
to even out the fact that they are powerful in the character's hands.
I always
Go
had
ahead.
to explain to anybody that if I'm talking to somebody that's a Starfield player, like Kenny or others, and I start to tell them about your mod, you can see their eyes start to get big. Wow, that's way overpowered. And it's like, okay, hold on. Before we go there, let's explain something. If you're a level 1 character, you can't get this stuff. You have to do things in order for you to win the prize. Superman may have been made in a day, but Spider-Man took a while. You know what I mean? You got to get there. You don't become a superhero overnight with this mod. It's a grind to get there. And if you're starting with a brand new character, it's hours and hours of playing. And I personally would rather just play the game and let the stuff happen, as opposed to just sit down and try to grind through everything all at once. Because that just seems to be almost cheaty. If you just sit down and don't do anything, but it's your game, what does it matter, right?
Yeah, single player game, it doesn't matter. You play the game how you want,
Right. So I have one character that's like a brand new character, and he'll go through all the progression of learning the new stuff for the astrodynamics and learning the new stuff for the manufacturing. And it's a slow slog through all that. And then I've got a character that's been through the New Game Plus, and he's able to go right into the basement, get a bunch of materials, and knock out the research and have access to a lot of the Darkstar abilities right off the bat. But it's not for nothing. He's 150, 175th level. He should be super powerful by that point.
But with Darkstar TGO, he's not anymore.
Right.
No.
I was playing I followed your recommendation of the different mod loadout when you put out TGO.
Mhm.
And you had, I don't know, 12 or so mods. There was Bedlam, there was Dark Universe Over Time, I think is one of them called. Then your stuff, New Galactic Harvest. There's a few. And if you load all those up, every time that you do a bounty or you do a side mission or you run into a POI on a new planet. I ran into one the other day and just trying to get through the place to get to the captain bounty that I had to get to, it killed me several times because you get lax. And then once I downloaded your newest version, your TGO, who I upgraded from the others, and started actually playing with it, oh yeah, one shots they're a thing again. All of a sudden, all my fancy armor ain't worth much anymore.
Now, are you playing on extreme difficulty, Jax?
Yeah,
Okay.
I've got everything set up to the max, I think. Except for I think in space combat, I've got my stuff turned down a little bit, so I don't do quite as much damage.
Okay.
But the enemies all do max damage. My stuff is like one notch below max.
Okay.
So, Wykkyd, around the time that Community Lulls came out and Darkstar Emissaries came out, I think you put out a video that was talking about some of your future plans for mods. So, can you give us kind of an update of what you've got going on in the future of your Starfield modding?
Sure. So things have changed a bit. The new Darkstar is a combination of course, astrodynamics and manufacturing. The core functionality, for those listening that get confused, I didn't just plug the two mods together. That's not how it works. You can't just turn off DSA, DSM, and turn on Darkstar and be fine.
Mhm.
They are new. It's a new mod. But as I alluded earlier, I wanted to bring in the game balance to make it feel non-cheaty and everything else. That was originally going to be its own mod that I was tentatively calling Darkstar Universe. And then, of course, the Dark Universe from the series of mods from that other mod developer I can never remember the name of. That started coming out, and I was like, well, I'm going to have to come up with a new name for that, but I still need that somewhere. That ended up becoming one with Darkstar. So there's one of my plans. I had also planned on doing another smaller mod, well, not small, but smaller than my current plan, called Darkstar Robotics. That was
Yeah.
one that I was talking about a lot back then. That is now going to just become one with the big one that I'm working on. So right now I've got a few more features I'm going to put out for Darkstar. Um, I'm currently working on an a rewrite to the way that I'm doing the scaling on the Punish Me and Darkstar settings to make that a little bit more conducive to patching. That way, if another modder wants to come in and say, "Hey, I want to inject my weapons into your scaling algorithm for, you know, weapon injection into these enemies," it'll be easier. Right now, it's not injectable, so I'm working on a rewrite to that to make that better. I'm working on the Darkstar Emissaries port of functionality into Darkstar. So yet again, another way for people to just be able to, if they choose, get rid of Darkstar Emissaries, but it will be more limited. So you'll always be able to run DSE with Darkstar. It's not going to ever fully replace unless you choose to. So some minor things like that, a couple new ship parts, and some more built-in ships, and then that'll round out Darkstar itself. So I'm about a month, 2 months away from that at best case scenario, and I've got an update still pending, waiting in the Bethesda review train.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm excited for that one to come out.
After that, there is a super secret weapon thing that I want to work on, which may or may not come to fruition. It's very experimental. So my next couple of mods I'm going to mention are like that. They're going to be small experiments to see what I'm capable of doing in the game engine, because they will affect how I build the big one. So I've got an experimental weapon thing I want to do, and there's potentially an experimental little mini quest line that I want to do. Those would be paid, but they'll be way down on the credit range, probably in the 1 or 200 range. Um, and then following those will also kind of be a palate cleanser for me, right? Something smaller to work on, because the big one that's coming eventually is Darkstar Terminal Dawn. So hinted at in the lore slates in Darkstar, and a little bit leading up to it, there is a war going on that the players have yet to be exposed to. Think faction war, but multi-dimensional.
Okay.
And Darkstar is just one of the two factions. The other one is Terminal Dawn. So that mod, if I can bring out what's in my head, is going to be absolutely epic. That was the final motivation for me charging money for Darkstar TGO, other than the fact it can't be achievement friendly unless you charge money for it.
Right.
I need funding
Mhm.
because current estimates are I'm going to need somewhere between 20 and 30 voice actors to do what I want with Darkstar Terminal Dawn. And the estimates right now, my wife helps manage a narration company. And even with discounts from my wife being one of the managers of the company, it's going to cost me tens of thousands of dollars to just pay for the voice acting for that. So I am nowhere close to that. It's probably going to take a year of development to get there. Hopefully, mods like Darkstar and these two smaller ones will churn enough to help fund that effort over time. That's
You
going
have
to
a
be based on
Patreon page?
Starfield's audience, and people coming back to the game when DLCs drop and things like that, and But that's the hope. I'm a writer first, a gamer second, and a game modder third. So I'm really hoping to be able to bring some of my storytelling deeper into the game experience for everybody.
Can I sign up to be a Wilhelm scream in your expansion?
Sure, why not?
No, that's really that'll be a lot of fun playing a storyline. So hopefully that works out for you. I'll definitely have to bring you back for an interview for that one, because with our show here with me and Jax, we both have very different interest into Starfield. Equally love the game, but I approach games much more from a narrative and story perspective, whereas he's more just the mechanics of the game. And so, and plus with me being PC and him being Xbox, we've been able to have a really good show where we're able to kind of bridge the gap between the spectrum of players. But yeah, I definitely enjoy the role play, like I was talking about earlier, how I create different characters to do different quests. Like on Skyrim, I had a different character for each faction just to get, to have the mechanics of my character inform the role play as they were going through, rather than back when I first played Oblivion, I had one guy do everything. That was just weird, really weird. You were talking earlier about how Starfield seems to be very much a modder's kind of like a paradise, because, and I wonder if the size of the game and the fact that it was built that way is part of the reason it has gotten a fair amount of negative criticism. Because I see a lot of players talking about how there's nothing in the game, but I'm just like, there's so much in the game. But to be fair, so much of it is procedurally generated, so there's no,
The real problem is the game didn't hold them by the hand and drag them there. So in Skyrim, think about it.
Mhm.
You can't walk 10 feet without tripping over more content. It's
Yeah.
all in one tiny map. And we used to think that map was huge, but compare it to Starfield. It's minuscule compared to a whole galaxy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're not tripping over it everywhere you go. It's not shoved down your throat constantly, and the main quest isn't giving you any sense of urgency. In Skyrim and in Fallout 4, in both cases, you're constantly reminded by quest dialogue and things that you encounter. Hey, there's this main quest I should be doing. There's this main quest I should be doing. Where's Sean? Where's Sean? Where's Sean? Where's Sean? Everywhere you look.
Yeah.
That's not the case with Starfield. What's the first thing that happens when you go talk to Sarah, right? You get through Vectera, the little pirate battle, and you go to Crete and you take that dude out, and Vasco's like, hey, let's go to the lodge. It starts off leading you by the hand, just like the other games. But as soon as you reach the lodge and talk to her, she says, and I'm going to try and quote her, you should take some time and acclimate to your surroundings or something like that. Like you should take time to settle in. That's the end of it right there.
Yep.
As far as leading you by the hand, that's where it stops.
Yeah.
And so you're dumped into this huge sandbox of what do I do next? Where's the thing I'm supposed to be doing?
Right. And if you don't have any curiosity and creativity, then you're going to stand there looking at your shoes.
Yeah.
But if you've got some curiosity and you've got some initiative, you're going to step out of the lodge and go, okay, there's a whole galaxy. What's over on that planet? It's the wanderlust. That I have a huge wanderlust in real life. What's over the hill? What's on top of the mountain? What's on the other side of the mountain? What's on the other side of the lake? What's in the bottom of the lake? Keep going, keep looking, keep going, forward, forward, forward. And this game allows you to go forward, and what's over the hill, and what's down off the, on the other side, and what's in the crevice, and what's in the building, and what's behind the building. So if you choose, there is so much to do, like you were saying, Kenny. It's not holding you by the hand, like you said. But if you look, there is stuff to do around every corner, everywhere, every mechanic.
Right.
You want to build stuff. You want to build bases. There's a whole system for it. You want to build ships. Whole system for it.
Yeah, you take at least equal amount of content as Skyrim, if not double the amount. But then you scatter it across 30, 40, 50, 60, 100, 200 worlds. That's where it loses people.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's where a large part of the complaints come from. And keep something else in mind that people tend to completely dismiss without intending to. This is a new intellectual property. It is a new platform. You're not walking it. It's not like Skyrim where you walked in potentially knowing Oblivion and Morrowind and Daggerfall and Arena and all these, right? You didn't walk into, it's not like walking into Fallout 4 where you potentially had already played Fallout 3, New Vegas, maybe even Fallout 1 and 2. You don't have all of that gaming history and lore built up from years of gaming that, I will point out, fills in the gaps automatically in your mind as you're playing.
Yep. And Kenny and I
There are
have
a lot of complaints when Fallout 4 first dropped from new players to Bethesda games. Didn't have the story from the previous games in the franchise. Fallout 4 didn't have DLCs yet either. And they'd walk in and they're like, I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it. All over the place. They didn't like the game as much as some of the longer term players who, by the way, while complaining, would still play Fallout 4 just to get the story. Play it once to get the story. You don't have those auto gap fills with Starfield. There is no history for your brain to fill in the gaps for.
That's what this game is. This will be the backdrop, the autofill, the lore. This is the lore building that they have to do in order to have a second game in the franchise.
So you're seeing the birth of a franchise. Your brain can't automatically fill the gaps for your benefit.
Right.
So the auto depth isn't there. You have to create all the depth yourself the first time through. And then you get dropped in front of Sarah with this non-urgent, who cares what you do attitude from the main quest line. And people feel lost. They stumble their way through. If they focus exclusively on the main quest, the game feels shallow. And now they're like, I don't get it. What's the point? This is a dumb game. And they move on.
And with that line that Sarah drops, it's almost as though it's a dual meaning line. Because the first time I played and heard her say that, I assumed she was just talking about exploring the lodge and getting familiar with your settings there. But as I progressed in the game, and definitely when I got to my second character and got to that point, I realized, yeah, it's the devs trying to tell the player, get out there and explore. And in a way, Starfield is like, it's the inevitable conclusion of Bethesda growing as a company. Yeah, imagine at some point, I definitely want to do like a what if Star Wars or Starfield was better episode of our podcast here. But I think about the next Elder Scrolls, and what if it's set in Hammerfell, and they have a well-designed world, fully developed, fully detailed everything, but you can hop on a ship and sail, and like it zooms out and shows the world of Nirn, or however the map would look, and then at that point it just shows all these little islands that you can pick and land on, and it would be procedurally generated for every island. So the main country is the same for everybody, but then this plethora of islands that people can land on, and it's all just procedurally generated. And that would be, I think, a lot of fun that they for them to include something like that into Elder Scrolls, but still have that detailed map, that one central world that's really realized.
Yeah, it's basically a microcosm of Starfield is kind of what you're saying. Is Starfield's an entire galaxy.
Yep.
Where you're saying like Elder Scrolls 6 would be a microcosm of that, where instead of being a spaceship, you're on a sailing ship. Instead of going to a different planet, you go to a different continent or a different island.
Yeah.
And they build that out similarly to the way they've done it in Starfield, but just on a smaller scale, on a continental scale.
Now, Wykkyd, do you think one of the biggest criticisms I see of Starfield, which I somewhat share, is that they did not include alien races. Specifically, when you think of Elder Scrolls games, there's 10 races, each have a unique power and a trait. And I, in a way, think that maybe they went too big by going full galaxy and not. Well, actually, no, they don't even have the full galaxy technically, so there still could be aliens out there. But do you think they should have had alien races included, or are you happy with it just being basically human dominated?
I'm torn on that. I love the entertainment value of alien conspiracy theories in real life. Like I love watching that kind of stuff. And I do believe there's aliens out there somewhere. Whether or not they're visiting Earth, I couldn't tell you. But so and I love like Star Trek and Star Wars and all of those things. So I'm kind of torn on if I would want to see aliens in this game. I think for the first release, the initial release, it might be too much to have aliens there while trying to also teach the player about the lore and the history of what happened to Earth, why we aren't on Earth anymore, which from a game development standpoint, we all know why we're not on Earth anymore, right? It was because they didn't want to try to recreate London and New York, and right, they needed to nuke the planet to make the game possible. So they had to come up with a story reason, and I like the story reason. I do like the lore tie-in with the temples and the artifacts and all of that. But like, how do you do that if Greys are involved? How do you tell that same story if mantids or reptilians or whatever you want to, what if they are present? That's a story problem. So if this is the story they wanted to tell, if this was the original concept, then they couldn't have injected aliens to start with. But that doesn't mean that the temples and artifacts aren't originally created by an alien species and that we won't encounter them eventually. Right? We don't know what's coming. The potentiality is there. And maybe the worlds that we have and the systems we have is a preset list Yeah, because they wanted to give us a lot of playground to play with. But maybe they stopped where they did because they wanted to leave room for all these others to appear on the galaxy map and plug those holes. And oh, these 3 are owned by the Mantids, those 4 are owned by the Reptilians, and these are the Greys. And who knows?
Okay.
They may
Right.
never bring in aliens. They may bring in aliens. There weren't aliens in Fallout 4, right?
Mhm.
Well, technically there is, but it's a red herring little gimmicky thing. But the point being that while there were different, things we could play, they were all human.
Mhm.
Right? Sure, you could be a
Yeah.
raider, you could run into super mutants and stuff, but they were humans modified by environmental things or disease or whatever. At the core, even ghouls, they're still human.
Yeah.
But one little fun fact for you: the game files still for Starfield still reference elves, Twimmer, power armor, ghouls.
Oh,
It's all
well,
still there.
it's all possible.
Well,
That's pretty cool.
wasn't there somebody that had made took the Skyrim map and dropped it on a planet in Starfield as a mod? Or is somebody working on that?
I think so, and I think that project's still kind of going, from what I understand.
Okay, because that would be a ton of fun to just land in. No, I guess maybe there'd be no quests or anything, but just land your spaceship right next to Whiterun. That'd be hilarious, and they can totally pull it off. With the way they've set up the lore in Starfield.
Yeah, and there's mods out there that give you base building assets that look a lot like Skyrim assets, and there's ones that that are almost pulled straight from the files of Fallout. So you can build planets if you wanted to, even as a player, not a modder. You can get a couple of mods, and you can make Fallout 4 settlement, or you could make you a Skyrim, castle kingdom area on a planet. So that's all available right now.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So Wykkyd, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask you on your Wykkyd, on your first playthrough, who died?
Sarah.
Sarah. Okay. Had you married her? Did you romance her? Okay. And then did you stay in the lodge or go up to the eye?
I got sent out with Barrett.
Okay.
To do the Captain Petrov thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe, I stayed in the lodge because of Vlad yelling, oh no, he left here, and then saying, oh, he's coming here. And of course, I didn't know what was coming.
Yeah.
I was picking up what they were putting down a bit, and I was like, oh, one of these characters is probably going to die in this. It's a triggering moment for the main character, so it's got to happen. But yeah, I was actually impressed when it happened, the way that it did.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, from a storytelling plot device point, I was like, yeah, this is awesome. And I had kind of put together though what was going on with the Starborn very early in my game play, because I was one of those players that ran into the Hunter like day one of playing Starfield.
Yeah, he's in Jemison, or he's in the bar right there in New Atlantis.
Yeah. I saw him and I'm like, okay, I've got to get that armor. That must be in game. They're teasing me right now with what I'm going to be able to be later on. All right, we got this.
Yeah, I didn't put it all together, but I did run into him, and same thing. Can I talk to him? Can he sell me that stuff? Where's he from? How do I get that? How do I do that? And then I just went on my happy little merry-go-lucky way, forgot about it, and continued the storyline. But yeah, I do specifically remember running into him in the viewport when I was doing the bartender's quest, and he's standing over in the corner. You're like, who's that dude? Can I hire him? I can hire everybody else in this place. How come I can't hire him? So yeah, definitely, teaser content there.
Yeah, I knew something was up when I finished. I got the artifact from the Scow, and I'm flying back with it was for me. It was Sam, and my thought process, because from the moment we got married, and prior to that, of course, I was rolling exclusively with Andreja, and so I went to dock at the Eye to pick her up. I'm like, cool, Sam's my best friend, but I want my wife back. So I go to dock, and it wouldn't let me dock at the Eye. That's when I knew something was up. So I from a narrative standpoint, it's awesome that they killed the character. Excuse me, but I do wish they had set it up a little different, where maybe you were tasked with either going here or here. Because the problem I had when I was down at the lodge, just like you said, what's his name's Vlad even says the guy just left. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to go up there knowing he's literally just going to fly right past me. That would have made no sense. And so there was a point in time I reloaded my save prior to that and played with letting Andreja live. Then I kind of felt that was cheap, and I get what the storytellers were trying to do. So to honor that, I just went back and I just let it go. So Andreja's dead. Sam's lived, so we don't have to worry about an evil Cora growing up without a father.
Oh, so real quick question.
Okay.
You've both been through that quest.
Yep.
This is a test metric to see how twisted you are. When the companion dies in any playthrough, do you or do you not go to the lodge basement and put on their outfit to go to their funeral?
I didn't go to the funeral the first time, so that's how I missed it. I was like, I'll playing in the universe somewhere, so I completely missed the funeral. But I did go and get Sam's stuff and put it on and go run around the universe in Sam's stuff, missing his funeral, but still wearing his crap. So that's sick and twisted when you put it that way.
I did not put on Andreja's outfit. I'm trying to. Well, and somehow I don't know if the game bugged on me, but I missed her funeral. I remember it being mentioned by Noelle, but I went back and talked to her periodically, and I think initially she was telling me it's coming up or we're not ready yet or something, and then I went back one time and there's just no dialogue option and nobody talked about it. So I don't know if the game bugged or if I happened to unfortunately just miss the window or what, but
You missed it. So basically, when you talk to her, you go upstairs and you sleep for 24 hours, and then the funeral happens. It's a 1 day wait.
Okay,
Yeah.
just a 1 day wait. Oh man.
Yeah. So when Sarah died, and I always play a female character mostly in most games.
Okay.
I immediately Noelle said something about the funeral, and there was a quest marker to go down to the basement and get the thing out of the chest, collect your companion's stuff. And
Okay.
I had given her equipment, so I'm like, I gotta go get that stuff. I don't want to lose it. I go down and I pick it all up, and I see her outfit in there. I'm like, yes. I put it on, and then I went to bed, took a nap, came downstairs, and I realized at one point I went to third person mode. I'm standing there dressed looking exactly like Sarah next to the painting of Sarah while everybody mourns Sarah. And I was like, oh yeah, this just happened. So I did it the next time Sam died. And I showed up to his funeral with Cora there crying, dressed like Sam, talking to her about how it's okay.
Yeah, that kid's gonna need some therapy.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
so that's how evil Cora is born.
Oh yeah, I caused it for everybody.
Do you think that they'll ever? And usually Bethesda does like typically 3 primary DLCs, with the third one, the last one being a little bigger. Do you think that they will have a way where you get to go back to your first universe? Or do you think that's not
No,
mechanically possible?
it's not, because the way it processes, it's actually clearing all that stuff out of your save every time you go
Yeah.
through NG Plus. So if you should actually be very happy that they do,
Mhm.
because that NG Plus mechanic saves so many people's access to their character.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
if your game starts bugging out and auto saves are causing crashes, that's save file bloat. That
Yep.
that problem existed in Skyrim and Fallout 4. It's just we didn't play our characters long enough to experience it usually.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But the solution there was always, well, I guess you got to roll a new character. Here, you can still keep your character. You just got to go through NG Plus.
Yeah. And that's why I love the NG Plus mechanic. Some people don't like losing everything, and as an avid shipbuilder, it's not easy losing my ships. But for that reason, I created, my combat medic who I have I've got the mod where I've got all the extra decorations. What's it called? Simple Living, I think. It's got all the extra decorations for the ships, and I took the Constellation briefcase and I set it on my navigation console just as a little inside joke that I'm never going to do the main quest on this character because, I just enjoyed doing the Vanguard, the Crimson Fleet Pro Sysdef, and then and then the Trackers Alliance stuff. And I'm happy with him just never doing the main quest. But on my main character, I was starting to have this bug happen when I went into Neon City, Sidonia, the Well, and even during the Entangled mission, where I had this frame rate stutter. I'd walk for 2 or 3 seconds, I'd get this little hiccup. And I noticed when I went through the Unity, the problem went away. And then over time, it comes back. That's
it. It's an interior cell bug. So there's an issue that a lot of us modders are still trying to track down, where any modification from a mod to any one of those interior cells, even if it's just like Darkstar drops a kiosk in Sidonia, totally messes up the city map, even though I didn't touch the city map.
Mm-hmm.
And that's only because Darkstar 1.0 doesn't have a dependency on the content patch that added city maps. 1.01, that's fixed because I added that dependency. That's all I did was add the dependency, and that fixed that one bug. So there's something going on strange with these interior cells where they're weirdly sharing resources via these content patches that makes them kind of step on each other. Like if any one of these gets nuked or blown up in any way by a mod or a game bug, all of them get affected. All of them. It's really, really, really strange.
So I was thinking it had to do with just the sheer amount of NPCs in these cells. Up until I did the Entangle mission and it was happening there, I'm like, whoa, I don't have a lot of NPCs in here. Maybe there's some critters, but so I realized it had to be something else. Thinking about the Unity and the NG Plus concept, then, so I ask this of you as equally as a mod author, but also as a player. Would you like to see the new Game Plus feature included in Elder Scrolls 6?
No. I think that could be a totally different thing. So as somebody that played way too many hours of Elder Scrolls Online before it was released and then fresh after release, I think Elder Scrolls Online is the problem with future Elder Scrolls 6 as it is today. Like it's going to be very hard for Bethesda to sell the concept of a single player, single part of the world map new Elder Scrolls game when all the 3D assets were created for Elder Scrolls Online for the entire planet, basically.
Yeah.
All of the factions, all of the equipment, all of the spell mechanics, all the combat mechanics. That was the most common complaint going into ESO beta was, oh, it's not enough like Skyrim. Why can't I loot everything I see? Why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? I could in Skyrim. And then that was like most of the feedback they got during ESO beta. And even though they were telling people, look, this is an MMO, it's not going to play the same. That was the big complaint. It didn't play the same. Now they've got it playing the same and better. And if I can go into ESO and drop into Hammerfell or Cyrodiil or wherever else, why should ES6 be limited to just bleh? Plus, the veteran content in ESO is very similar to a New Game Plus mechanic. I play through the main quest line on Faction 1. I reach the end, and then the main NPC says, well, why don't you try this again under another faction and see what the world looks like from their eyes? And then you go play through the game again, and then you do it again. And so that play loop recycling was there for ESO. They could definitely do something like that for ES6. But the big problem with ES6 before it even releases is the fact that ESO exists.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be compared to it no matter how you dice it.
Yeah.
It will be
Yeah.
declared a failure by the widestream media because it's not Elder Scrolls Online for single player.
Right. Yeah.
Do you think that maybe releasing Oblivion Remastered was kind of a trying to prove that a fresh IP would sell? Because they
I think that what they were trying to prove there was, I think they were trying to get an upgraded version of Oblivion, because taking a step back here, they released Skyrim, and then they released Fallout 4, and then they did Skyrim Special Edition. Are either of you familiar with what they actually did to make the Special Edition?
made it
They
4K.
they took the Fallout 4 engine upgrades and rolled them back to Skyrim.
Mhm.
That's what they did.
Okay.
They took Skyrim, turned it into Fallout 4, took Fallout 4, turned it back into Skyrim.
Right.
Okay.
Effectively. So they do this periodically, and they recycle backwards to upgrade the old to the state of the new, which is how
Mhm.
they keep Skyrim relevant and how they keep Fallout 4 relevant and all of that. And Fallout 4 has received a few upgrades from what they did in prep for Starfield over time. But I don't think that was possible going back to Oblivion, because Oblivion was still on Game Biro. Game
Mhm.
Biro engine is what they bought and converted and customized to turn it into the creation engine. So they were still in the old engine. I don't think it's going to go backwards. So I think
Mhm.
they were still trying to decide, how do we upgrade Oblivion and make it more modern relevant,
Mhm.
get players to go back and re-experience our old IP. So that was probably motivation number one. And motivation number two is they've been getting a lot of pressure from non-game developers around the gaming community in general, who really don't know better, that are saying, oh, your game engine is your problem. You should try a new game engine. So this was simultaneously an experiment to see how it would work out, to have that dual layer thing of,
Mm.
you know, Unreal Engine running on top of our engine.
Right.
So one of the big reasons they keep trying to keep that engine in there is that's how they build the games. They're technically modding a core engine
Mhm.
to produce the game itself, just like a modder would, but with a slightly more advanced tool set and more skill. Right?
Mhm.
They have better training, better experience. They're real game developers. But at the end of the day, they're modding a core engine to produce a game.
Mhm.
So if they get rid of their creation engine, basically might as well fire everybody in the building, because it's a completely new thing now, right? And that also makes it less moddable. It would make it so that they would lose their core audience.
Yeah.
Well,
Like,
there's
sure, we enjoy Bethesda games, but we enjoy modding them more, right?
well,
As a standard, that's what we do. We break them
r-
and then slowly
right.
roll back our mod load order until we fix it again,
Yes.
right? So if you can't do that, it's not a Bethesda game. And then
Right.
there was the factor of, we love picking everything up. That was the big complaint in the ESO beta. We love picking everything up.
Mhm.
We love
Yeah.
being able to throw Fusro Da and see everything in the dungeon go flying away from us because it wasn't nailed down and glued to the floor. And it
Drop a
was the
buck
first
on
complaint
somebody's
people
head.
had when they went into Avowed. The NPCs are just may as well be talking posts, right? Because
Yeah.
everything was stuck in place, not
Yep.
interactable. And
The
that's a
thing.
huge complaint with games like that.
And the thing that
You
people
lose all of
complain
that.
about is what makes Bethesda games, the interactability.
And that stuff doesn't work in newer game engines. It's too
Right.
much for their physics engines. It's too much
Yep.
for their right. I'm sure it could be made to work, but the heavy lift involved just is not worth it.
Yeah.
Plus, these more complex engines don't handle open world as well as the old engines do.
Hmm.
And that also has been proven. And that's why like Kingdom Come couldn't go with Unreal and these they had to go back to CryEngine to do Kingdom Come Deliverance because the newer engines could not handle the wide open spaces. So they were experimenting to try and figure out what are we capable of doing here? Can we layer and do just the 3D art assets through another game? Personally, from what I've seen, I think the still imagery looks great. I do not like the animations I've seen at all. Not that it feels disjointed. It feels to me like those characters aren't actually in the scene.
Mm.
Like it's a weird animation plane overlaid over top of the game space. Game space looks beautiful. The
Yeah.
rest of it I'm not a fan of. And I'll never play the Oblivion remaster. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm tempted to play it because, like you said, the stills look amazing, and I like the fact that you can the draw distance is so much improved. So when you're standing at Imperial City, you can see Frostcrag Spire, the Wizard's Tower, up on the mountain. But I've had that fear of when I'm actually playing it, is it going to feel like a 20-year-old game that looks like a newish game, right? That's my concern.
Well, I'm enjoying it a lot. The nostalgia comes back to me
Mhm.
from 20 years ago and how much I loved it back then, and it just brings that passion back out into me. So it could be the rose-colored glasses that I'm playing the game through that's gives me that. And if so, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I paid for it. I'm enjoying it, and so I'm really enjoying it. I think if you enjoyed it originally 20 years ago, it's on Game Pass. Check it out. Try it. Why not? You're already paying your $20. You already bought the ticket. Ride the ride. See what it's about.
Yeah. I'm anti Game Pass. I buy.
I don't.
I want to own my products.
Well, I don't. It's like a Netflix or a
Yeah.
Hulu. You wait for an entire something to come out that you want to see, and then you pick it up for a month. You consume the
Yeah.
content, and then you drop the subscription. And the next time something big comes out, rather than spending $70 on a game or $50 on a game, I spend 20. If I like it, then that means I spent 90, on Starfield because I bought it on I bought Game Pass, and then I was like you, I want the copy. I like it enough. I want a copy of it. So I went out and bought a copy.
Yeah. I'm like that with all my TV subscriptions: Netflix, Disney Plus, Paramount. I subscribe for a month and cancel it, and because if you're paying for them all the time, you're just paying. Might as well just go back to the old days of cable. That's how expensive that was.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
You finally got away from $200 cable bills, and now to have everything again, you're back to $200 in subscriptions.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
So,
well,
Wykkyd,
Wykkyd.
where can people get a hold of you to support you and your content?
there is wickedgaming.com. My RL Parker Gaming YouTube channel. All of my mod pages have links to the Darkstar headquarters Discord, which I believe both of you are members of. You've seen the member count there.
Yep.
You've probably seen the flood of support that people get
Yeah.
anytime they have
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
I've got, if anybody is so inclined, I've got donation links for my PayPal donations on all my websites. But honestly, I would say if you're looking to contribute to me, if you don't already have Darkstar, just buy that, give it a try. Pretty sure most people are going to like it. And then hopefully I can get this next mod out of my head to you guys and I can't wait to see. That's my daydream, is to see you two playing Darkstar Terminal Dawn and going through the main quest of that the first time. That's what I've been building to since I picked up my laptop to start modding Starfield. Is that has always been my goal, is to get to there, and I'm halfway there now.
Well, that's great. That I'm waiting, anticipating with just the grit of Christmas morning coming. I love the stuff you put out. I've been a great fan of yours, and it shows that you're doing it for me through your products. And maybe it's because you're doing it for you and what you find the game is having some soft points on, and you're trying to bolster that. And the rest of us in the community look at that and go, yeah, that's exactly what I would have done. That's exactly what it needed. Thank you so much. So yeah, from me to you, I want to thank you so much for your hard work.
Yeah, and I definitely look forward to diving officially into the Darkstar TGO. And Jackson and I are planning on doing a proper TGO review, probably maybe another month down the line, once we've both had a good amount of time to play on it. So we'll be able to just properly review that after we've spent plenty of time in your mod.
Awesome. I look forward to it.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and this has been a great interview, and we hope to do more things like this.
Awesome. Well, you guys, thank you for having me on. Love your podcast. And make sure that you are announcing your podcast episodes on Darkstar headquarters.
Yes. In Discord.
Yes, it is a self-promotion encouraged server. I encourage you strongly to promote yourself and your podcast on the Discord.
Yeah, there's an actual page for it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to start going back through my entire library of all my ship builds and everything, and just one at a time, just every couple days, drop a new one in there until I get caught up currently. Because I'm currently doing that on Rumble, just as a backup platform for video streaming, and then in the Starfield gaming community, where I'm not sure you can't share links there, but you can upload the video directly onto Facebook. And so I'm like eight videos behind right now, so I'm almost caught up to there. So, but excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time, Wykkyd. Definitely had a good interview today, and looking forward to the Terminal Dawn. You said that's going to be the name of the expansion. Okay, DLC.
Darkstar Terminal Dawn.
Okay, yeah, looking forward to that. So, and obviously, if you crack that and you're able to get it out, we'll definitely have you back for an interview on that one as well.
All right. See you next year sometime then.
Yep. Oh, I'm sure we'll try to get you back on here maybe for some other fun stuff. All right, folks. Well, take care. See you in the Starfield.
Drive fast. Take lots of chances.
Now that was some fine work under pressure.